Hey, this is the Daily Overpass. My name is Eric and I make apps. Now today I want to talk about how no one has heard of any of my apps, but that's okay. Whenever I meet someone new, either in a business situation or a social situation, which to be honest with you is not that often, whenever I meet somebody new, a lot of times I'll ask what I do, and then I'll say, I'm an app developer, and then they'll say, they always ask the same question. They say, oh, have you done something I might have heard of? And I usually think about it and I go, probably not. I'll usually say probably not. And they go, well, try me. Name one of your apps. I may have heard of it. I use the App Store all the time, and then I'll tell them about Ear Spy or Ear Agent or one of the top ones, and they'll just kind of go blank, like, oh, right, and it's a bit infuriating because in my wildest dreams they would have heard of it and they have it on their phone, right? I think all of us, when we release our first app, at least I think so, we all swing for the fences. When we release it, we're hoping that we'll be, that'll be wildly popular, like right out the gates, and it's going to do really, really well. But the reality is, a lot of the times we have to keep building on it and just incrementally getting better and better and better, so it makes a successful living. Like, I have never, ever, ever told somebody about my app and they've heard of it, unless that's how they found me, obviously, through the app. So it's there's lots of room there. Right? It's like, we all want to be the Airbnb or the Snapchat or the Angry Birds or the Flappy Birds or whatever, but there's the likelihood is we might not, but we should always be shooting for that, right? In my wildest dreams, every time we do a new marketing campaign, every time we try to add a new feature, I think this is going to be big. This is going to really improve things, and sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does. I think the biggest, I've told you about this before, the biggest change I'd made in the last few years, last 3 or 4 years, was localizing my app to the top 10 languages of the visitors, and then my downloads tripled, and the real revenue started coming in. The second biggest thing I did was increasing the amount of ads I was showing, because I'd had an ad mob representative look at it and say, you don't seem to be showing any ads, and I go, yeah, I don't want to annoy users, so I just show it on the 4th time they open. And then he's like, well, most developers show it more frequently. And then I just started increasing it until the feedback was so bad that I did. So I was trying to find that happy medium between having enough ads to earn revenue and not annoying the users so much that they completely stop using the app altogether. And that might be one of the reasons why user retention is low too, because the ads, but I hope not. So anyway, over the weekend I read a book, I finished reading a book that I got for Christmas, and it was the first non-technical, non-business book that I've read in a long time. It was David McCullough's biography of the Wright brothers, which I'd asked for Christmas and got. And he's one of my favorite authors. It's a lot of people's favorite authors in history, because my degree was in history out of university. So he wrote a really good biography of Truman, one of John Adams. He wrote one called C-76 about the Revolutionary War, and he wrote a really good one on the Panama Canal, and I read that. It was really good. So one of the takeaways I took away from it was, because I'm always thinking about apps. Whenever I read anything that's not app related, I'm thinking about apps. It's just because that's the world that we live in, right? And when they did their first, like nearly 115 years ago, in 1903, December of 1903, when the Wright brothers did their first flight in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, I think it was like 17 seconds or 11 seconds. It was less than 30 seconds, it was huge, right? That's what we celebrate when we talk about the birth of flight. Although there were several competitors at that time, nobody really cared. There was mentioned in a local newspaper. They tried to get more national exposure, right? But they were very technical. They didn't want to toot their own horn. They were very much on the technical side, right? They weren't the kind of people who go out and just, hey, everybody, look what we did. Like most of us developers are, to be honest with you. We want to focus on the technical aspect. So they would go back to their bicycle shop and they would tweak things. It would come out the next version, the next version, next version. And they tried to sell it to the US government, and they really weren't getting a response. And it was like 3 or 4 years later before they finally started getting some sort of recognition for it. Right? We always think of 1903 as being this big date, but it was most people didn't even know about it until several years later. They tried to sell it to the French government, so then they went out to France and to Paris, and they were flying nearly every day, and they became a huge sensation. They got the exposure that they needed, and all that kind of stuff. And it was and that's what got me thinking about apps and being the top person, right? We all know the Wright brothers, and if we come up with a new invention, we think it needs to be completely and totally unique like the Wright brothers. But there's been a lot of money made in airline industry since then. There's going to be a lot of money made in the app industry that's not going to be the ones that make the headlines, and not going to be the ones that you know, that everybody knows about. But as long as we get people to use them, as long as we get people into our applications, hopefully talking about them to enough people, to enough of the right people, that we can make money with apps. I know I'm kind of all over the place today. Sorry about that. But I hope you had a great weekend. That's it for today. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.